I'm Lidia Aguilera, and I'm the Associate Dean of Interprofessional Education and Special Projects for the College of Health Professions. On behalf of the college, welcome to our inaugural Interprofessional Education Symposium. Those of you that have registered for the event will receive an email next week with your certificate of attendance and a short survey. Please look for that email next week. At this time, I want to recognize the people behind the scenes that made this symposium happen. First of all, our dean and the dean's executive team. The IPE committee members, please stand. And our administrative staff. In particular, I would like to thank Jennifer Bernal, who is up here to my right. She's in charge of events for our college. Our committee was established 2 years ago, and one of the charges was the development of a vision and a mission for interprofessional education. And those concepts in the vision and mission include achieving national recognition as educators of gold standard future healthcare interprofessional team members, working to ensure excellence, equity, diversity, inclusion for our students, our faculty, and our community. And we want to train practice-ready future healthcare professionals who will promote quality health outcomes and advocate for patients or clients' safety via interprofessional team strategies. Today, we're here to celebrate our vision and the journey that will carry us through this process. And all of you, each one of you, are on this journey with us. Whether it's in support, teaching, learning, scholarship, importantly, translation into clinical practice, and helping to make a culture change. We're on this ride together. Please direct your attention to the circle of friends, centerpieces on your tables. Your programs include a photo of this circle and the Mayan legend surrounding these figures. You can read in your program that the Mayans came together in this circle of friends at the end of the evening when they gathered, as we say in Team Steps, for a debrief at the end of the day's events. And they celebrated each other's good qualities. This is pre-Columbian art. The ideas for mutual support and team dynamics has been around for a long, long time. Our hope for today is that it represents to you the theme of the day, a gathering of healthcare professionals who have come together to learn about and appreciate each other's specialized skills, to share stories, lessons learned, and network as an interprofessional team. Our committee, our college, is working together with the objective to educate tomorrow's practice-ready interprofessional healthcare team. And we're reaching out beyond our college. We have to. This afternoon, we're hosting an IPE workshop led by Dr. Tamara Al-Rawad from the School of Social Work. This workshop will include students and faculty from the College of Health Professions, the School of Social Work, Nursing, and the School of Medicine. We're off to a good start, but we want to achieve a great interprofessional program for our students and faculty. And I believe we will do it, largely due to the support of our next speaker. Allow me to introduce Dr. Michael Saylor, founding dean of the College of Health Professions. He received his PhD in microbiology from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. He maintains a research laboratory focused on the elucidation of cellular iron metabolism and the function of iron in trichomonad pathogenesis. He leads the College of Health Professions that houses a School of Rehabilitative Services and Counseling, 5 departments, the Border Health Office, and the Integrated Health Sciences degree program. The College of Health Professions provides an education to 5,700 undergraduate and almost 1,000 graduate students majoring in one of the 28 degree programs offered at the bachelor's, master's. He has the knowledge, training, and acumen of a great leader. But more importantly, he is the consummate team leader. He is selfless and fearless. He models leadership and collaboration for team-based problem solving. And this includes listening to and validating members of the team. And this team includes the students, staff, and faculty of the college. Help me to welcome our leader, Dean Michael Saylor.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilera, for those very kind words. Even so, I don't know if I can live up to all of that that you just committed me to. But in any case, I certainly agree. It's a good start. And I knew that we had a good start this morning when I was driving in. Out of the 10 traffic lights that I have to pass through, only one was red. I made it in a record time of just 21 minutes. That's the fastest ever I made it to campus from my house. So usually it takes me around 30 minutes. So I knew that was a great start. So interprofessional education refers to occasions when students from 2 or more professions in health and social care learn together during all or part of the professional training with the object of cultivating collaborative practice for providing client and patient-centered healthcare. Kind of a definition, which by the way, I stole from Wikipedia. So just to acknowledge that. It's kind of a simplified version of what interprofessional education really is. But then upon further reflection, it actually incorporates a lot if you really think about it. So for example, what does it mean, learn together? What does it require to learn together? Yes, we are all social learners, but the environment is very important of how we are learning in a social group. We all had teachers that were maybe really good teachers, but they were just not for us, right? So even there's someone that we can learn from, we will not learn. So to be learning in a social group requires a lot of work and a lot of interaction. Cultivating collaborative practice, that's a whole set of competencies that you have to have. Providing client and patient-centered healthcare, that's another whole set of competencies that you might have to accomplish this. So a simple definition, but really very, very complex. And what that really tells us is that having one interprofessional activity per semester or 2 or per year just doesn't cut it to learn how to work together in a collaborative healthcare environment. We have to do better. Well, good morning and welcome to our very first Interprofessional Education Symposium. And I'm really impressed by the turnout this morning. And how many of you are actually interested in this topic and have come out to participate today. Thank you so much for your participation and interest. The mission of the College of Health Professions is to be the leading institution of excellence in health and human services, education, healthcare, and research, producing highly skilled practitioners, educators, and researchers through high-quality educational programs, meaningful experiential learning opportunities, and the development of scientific and intellectual inquiry for the promotion of health equity in the Rio Grande Valley and beyond. That's our mission statement for the college. And all our faculty are committed to make this a reality. But then we have to ask ourselves, how do we actually accomplish this? How do we produce these highly skilled practitioners who will deliver a world-class patient care experience and promote health equity here in the Valley and beyond? I think a key to the answer to this question is understanding what actually constitutes an excellent healthcare professional. And I thought that would be an easy question to answer. And I turned out, no, that's not easy. So of course, being a researcher myself, I immediately went to the research literature and say, well, there must be something somewhere. Guess what? Almost nothing. However, there was one superb study done by researchers to actually find out what constitutes an excellent healthcare professional. And it was done through focus groups, surveys, interviews of a multitude of professionals from different professions. And they actually finally, amazingly, I mean, if hundreds of people come together actually can agree on one document, that's just absolutely amazing. But they did. And it's 2 pages long. I have it right here. Highlighted a few things of what it takes to be an excellent allied health professional. Let me give you some examples. Excellent healthcare professional will use knowledge in a broad and multidisciplinary field, shares knowledge in a multidisciplinary context, focus on developing new knowledge and skills, is focused on quality improvement and knowledge of skills, and has courage to oppose, having the courage to question others' opinions in multi-professional settings, focused on cooperating with professionals in various settings, communicating with clarity and to the point, discussing new ideas, motivating patients and clients to make a choice, developing creative alternatives, providing arguments for doing things other than by the protocol, showing reflectivity and transparency in one's activities, acting effectively by integrating relevant information, applying principles of evidence-based practice, seeking and finding scientific knowledge. And there are many, many more. But notice none of them said, you need to have to have taken this course and you must have made an A in that course. It's nowhere found in this document. Isn't that amazing? And what do we do in academia? You have to take this course, and then you take this course, and then you take this course, and then hopefully what actually in this document you actually learned. But do we really know? We don't. But to the point, if you think about all of those qualities that I just mentioned and all the others that are in this document, what do they actually all have in common? I can tell you, nobody else wants to. They are all competencies derived from interprofessional education. So today's patients are complex, have complex health needs, especially with a slew of chronic diseases that plagues our society. And so they typically require more than one discipline to address the health issues. So modern medicine has become a team sport, especially in the hospital setting. So the typical inpatient experience features a cadre of health professionals working together to deliver quality healthcare and a stellar patient experience. And this experience has been also known as interprofessional collaborative practice and has been defined as a process which includes communication, decision-making, enabling a synergistic influence of group knowledge and skills. Elements of collaborative practice also includes responsibility, accountability, coordination, communication, cooperation, assertiveness, autonomy, and mutual and important mutual trust and respect. And this partnership then really creates a powerful interprofessional team to improve patient care and outcomes, reduce medical errors, start treatment earlier, reduce inefficiencies in the healthcare, reduce healthcare costs, and improve staff relationship and job satisfaction. Beautiful picture, except how much of this does actually really happen? So over the past year, because of the work that Dr. Aguilera and her committee is doing, I really observed the interaction of my healthcare team. Unfortunately, over the past year, I had to visit a lot of them. So what's my experience? And really, to look at the picture that I just present you, I'm sorry, but I have to call BS. So, number one, the front office had no clue about anything. As a matter of fact, I went in one of the offices to my PCP, and I had to fill out the form. And on the form, it says my PCP was my dermatologist. I handed the form back and says, you know, I'm here to see my PCP, not my dermatologist. Right? So can you please change that? Oh yeah, we will change that. Well, next time I came in, my PCP was still my dermatologist. So going actually into the back and seeing the different providers, starting usually with a nurse, and then other professionals, and finally the physician, I noticed that they weren't talking to each other. Everyone seemed to have a little piece of the puzzle, but nobody really talked to each other. Well, they looked at the charts, right? They had this electronic health record system, but I can tell you there's not everything in there, right? When the nurse sees me in the morning and takes my blood pressure, she can see whether I'm nervous, whether I'm anxious, but that's not in the electronic health record, right? It just tells you the number. But whether I'm nervous, anxious, or whatever, does reflect on my blood pressure. Right? There's no communication. Then frequently, I really receive contradictory information from the different providers. This one tells me this, but this one tells me do this. Right? How am I supposed to know? Well, luckily, I have a degree in health-related things, so I kind of can figure it out. But if I think about my mom, who didn't finish high school, well, what is she going to do? Well, she probably comes to me, but, you know, she would be completely confused. Making it even worse, then the PCP refers me to specialists. I come back to the PCP, and the PCP doesn't know what the specialist actually found. Again, no communication. So the picture that I drew you in the beginning is really not what happens yet, at least from my experience, and you might have a different experience, and hopefully you do. But I think we still have a lot of work to do. So what do we actually need to do to reap the benefits of collaborative practice that the healthcare team must have? Well, we all know building an interprofessional collaborative healthcare team is a difficult task to do. Communicating effectively is a difficult thing to do. Just watch the news, how people talk and never understand each other, right? So, but I think to have a good start is really to start with interprofessional education. That's where you start learning these competencies. And this is what this conference is all about today. So I hope that you will enjoy today's activities and take back some ideas that you can incorporate in your work and teaching. I really like to thank Dr. Aguilera and Dr. Paz, who took the lead in planning this conference and putting it together. And as with anything, it takes a whole team to do this right. So they both had support, superb support from the college IPE committee, with the committee chair, Professor Puente, Dr. Kim, Professor Garza, Professor Garcia, Professor Perez, Dr. Anger, Dr. Diana Paz, Professor Garza, Professor Garcia, and Drs. Lin Wang and Dr. Aguilera. Now, they were all supported by a wonderful team from the Dean's Office, and I'd like to recognize the contributions by Jennifer Bernal, Jennifer Martinez, Dominga Delgado, Rosalinda Rubio, Melinda Munoz, Janie Piziana, and our work study Paloma Grimaldo. And more amazing, we are interprofessional. That's the Dean's Office. And here comes Health and Human Performance and helped out as well. And I'd like to especially recognize Juan Carlos Ayala and Mario Salgado. Please help me to thank all these people who put this wonderful event together. Well, that was already a long list, but there's more. We also have IT services, facility services, food services, a lot of other people that are all involved in making this possible, and thank them as well. I now have the pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Deepu George. Dr. Deepu George is an associate professor of family medicine at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and serves as the director of integrated behavioral health. Dr. George received a BS in psychology, an MS in holistic psychological counseling, and a PhD in human development and family sciences. And if I understand correctly, you're seeking yet another degree right now. No. He further received additional training through numerous fellowships. And prior to his appointment at UTRGV, Dr. George lent his expertise to Virginia Tech, University of Georgia, the Meadows Health Policy Institute, and the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. In addition to advancing the integrated health, behavioral health in the Department of Family Medicine, his work also focuses on workforce development. This includes integrating behavioral medicine education for family medicine residency training and starting a primary care behavioral health certificate training for all mental health graduate students at UTRGV. He's a contributing member of the Integrated Care podcast and is a president-elect for the Collaborative Family Health Care Association. Dr. George notably has also received multi-million-dollar grants. And finally, as I said, he is in the process of getting another degree, this time in theology, to really allow him to better focus on the role of Thank you, in health. Please help me welcome Dr. Deepu George.
All right, good morning. That's it? You guys had coffee, breakfast, they fed you? That's all the energy you're gonna give me? All right, let's try that again. Good morning. All right, that's a little better, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lecker, for that generous and wonderful introduction. Thank you, Dr. Aguilera and Dr. Paz for inviting me and all the members of the esteemed committee that organized this wonderful event. It's actually a big honor and privilege for me to do this because interprofessional work is the water that I swim in every day. I don't think I have practiced outside the context of a team in my entire professional career so far, and I don't see myself going solo at any point, right? So this is it. I also, Dr. Lecker mentioned the Collaborative Family Healthcare Association, so I also bring you greetings from 1,700 individual members and probably 60 organizational members of CFHA. It's an interprofessional, discipline agnostic organization that's really committed to advancing evidence-based practices in integrated care, strengthening the ideals of primary care where we can increase behavioral health and other things. And we're in the process of discerning a clearer path to practice where we can ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion as an organization, and hopefully it'll translate to our interprofessional work that we'll do. So that's a little bit about Collaborative Family Healthcare Association, if you guys are interested in looking that up. It does have physicians, nurse practitioners, behavioral health professionals, and other folks that are part of it. So for my brief time this morning to kind of help us frame, to think about our interprofessional experiences, whether you are an interprofessional educator, a trainer, or a doer, I want to offer a few placeholders for us to think and help you kind of gauge your own experiences in your work. I'll kind of end each theme with a question for you to ask yourself, perhaps, and your team, in the hopes that it can deepen your work or your knowledge or your experience. And be appreciative of the skills that is required and the importance of this work. I also want to reflect on Dean Lecker's experience in kind of thinking about his healthcare journey. And I'm wondering if the teams that he saw reflected and paused a little more often, if he may have had a different experience with all of this. So for our journey today, we'll make a couple of pit stops today. The first one is an important lesson of transformation at the deepest level from a colony of European honeybees and African killer bees. I'll get into it in a little bit. The second is about the art of designing a tire for a space shuttle and the inextricable responsibility to merge with interprofessional expertise. And then for a third, I'll focus a little bit on the importance of an expert team versus a team of experts. And we'll kind of dive into a few points from the literature on that. And then finally, my concluding thoughts and hopes for you guys to take home with you. So a few years before 2017, a group of associates in Mexico, working for someone named Gene Robinson, kidnapped 1,000 newborns for an important genetic experiment. Now, before you guys think that's like the next plot of Narcos, Mexico, or whatever, let me clarify, don't report me to the authorities. I'm just the messenger. So the 1,000 newborns were 500 European honeybees and 500 African killer bees. And Gene Robinson is actually an entomologist from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign campus, and his counterparts in Mexico were from the National Center for Research in Animal Physiology. So what were they doing with these two sets of honeybees? Well, they were trying to find the mechanism by which the basic bee behavior changed. Prior evidence had shown that if killer bees were placed in a European bee colony, where they were really young, or when they were really young, they would actually assimilate. And the European bees' moderate ways will be assimilated into the African killer bees and vice versa. Now, while they had a hunch that it had something to do with genes, they would eventually find out that it was far more fundamental and actual DNA change. The scientific wisdom that prevailed in the literature that time confirmed The gene expression and epigenetics, which is at best environment, can cause some limited influence on gene expression. For example, environmental influences can brighten or dim expressions of genes at various times. They also knew that when honeybees were repeatedly exposed to a pheromone that signaled danger, bees immediately show behavioral and neural changes, and they fly into action to defend their social territory. Now, African bees, when they were repeatedly exposed to these hormones, they became more hostile. Now, with these increased frequency in their exposure, gene expression matched the rise in aggressiveness to the threats that they noticed. Now, what's important to think about here is each exposure not only changed their behavior, but the basic transcription genes, or the genes that regulate other genes, therefore permanently altered their baseline. So Robinson was taking a leap of faith to further explore this whole thing when he said environment can influence big sectors of genes right across the genome, which is kind of an audacious thing to say. So in other words, who you hang out with and how they behave can impact how genes acted up. So in this kidnapping study that I mentioned, which is kidnapping bees, not babies, they took 250 European honeybees and 250 African honeybees, and they swapped their colonies. Now they were swapped as younglings, so they assimilate into the colony and they are not perceived as a threat by the other members of the colony. Now each swapped honeybee was painted for easy identification. Now once this was accomplished, Robinson's collaborators from Mexico, they suited up every 5 to 10 days and they opened the hives and they had a little specialized vacuum and they sucked up about a dozen each time and they were frozen in liquid nitrogen. Now they froze them in liquid nitrogen because it preserves a state of gene activity at that moment. 6 weeks, 250 bees later, which represented every stage of their bee life, the frozen bees were shipped to Robinson and team. Their analysis revealed what Robinson called a stunning pattern. For the bees that were fostered to a new home, the life in their new home had altered the activity of whole sector genes. The move between hives not only changed their behavior, but changed how their genes work differently. This brings me to my first reflection about our work as interprofessional educators and doers. As we engage in deep interprofessional work, do we experience a fundamental shift that caused to behave in ways that match the new interprofessional context? And does it change us at the deepest level of our identity? My reflection is that, like the transformation of our bee friends, our placement in a hive of interprofessional activities and work should mutate and transform our behaviors and, at a more fundamental level, our identities as professionals. For example, I'll put the spotlight on me here a little bit. I'm a family therapist by training, and presently you can say I'm a therapist in recovery. I function as a behavioral health consultant in primary care. I essentially run around with physician assistants, nurse practitioners, or physicians to provide same-day access to a large variety of mental and behavioral health needs of our population, thereby reducing stigma and increasing access. Now, at a behavioral level, if I had not synced my behavior to this new context, I would want to honor what I was trained in, or the sacred rules of my professional training, which would be working mostly and only with families and couples, psychotherapy sessions that lasted up to 60 minutes, seeing families and patients pretty frequently, and a sign outside my door that would typically say, "Do not disturb, session in progress." Now, I want you to imagine that set of behaviors and attitudes in the midst of a very busy primary care clinic. right? We can quickly see how that could be unhelpful. It'll prevent me from valuing the skills of my colleagues. It'll prevent me from fostering new practice habits and a failure to adapt to a new environment. So as a consultant, my skills have adapted over time, where we see up to 13 patients a day or 8 in one afternoon, still learning, by the way, how to do this better and better each day. Now, a more fundamental change in my identity occurred in 2015 when I heard Dr. Purinda Khatri, who is a leader from Cherokee Health Systems in Tennessee, when she said, as behavioral health professionals, because before that I used to think I got to take care of the mental health and behavioral health needs of our populations. She said, no, your job is to respond to the functions of primary care and not just mental health needs. This meant that I was appreciating, valuing, and scanning my environment for ways that I can be helpful. I don't need to care about A1C or diabetic foot exams every year, but now as a primary care team member, I better care because that's a function of primary care, right? So today I see myself as a primary care educator and a team member with specialized skills in behavioral medicine. Now, to our second stop, right? I don't know how many of you have had transformative interactions during your plane rides. One of my most memorable conversation in air happened actually a few weeks ago with someone named Dr. Jogesh Arora. Now, Dr. Arora holds a PhD in organic chemistry and is a polymer technologist. I actually learned a lot about polymer that day, probably more than I wanted to. Now, polymers are substances or materials that consist of very large molecules or macromolecules composed of many repeating units. What that means is that both natural and synthetic polymers have such broad properties that they actually show up in materials and things that we use in everyday life. He actually showed me that everything that we touched in the aircraft had varying expressions and elements of polymer. This conversation extended to his job, his first job at BF Goodrich Tire Company, his deep understanding of the landing mechanisms of flights, as he was instrumental in designing the tires for the landing of aircrafts, and his eventual involvement in designing the tires for the space shuttle. Now, we connected over a 3-hour flight in deep spiritual, cultural, and professional levels, but one of his statements about his work on that space shuttle, tire work that he did, held special relevance for our conversation for today. He said that as a chemist, he had to fundamentally understand all aspects of the engineering team and their design, because without it, he and his team could not deliver a design that was functional. The process that stood out to me is his sense of curiosity that served as the undercurrent of their work in building a tire, and the sense of valuing the technical skills of the engineers, so much so that it predicted every one of their moves. There was an inextricable sense of mutuality and deep connectedness in how they worked. So here is my next question to you. In our work in interprofessional teams, what are the ways that we consistently remain curious? To what extent do we value the skills, methods, and analytical behaviors of our colleagues that directly link and influence our work? To kind of go back to the earlier theme, are you fundamentally transformed in how you approach a problem based on the influences that you have around you? As educators and doers, we ought to focus on ways we engage and encourage curiosity and how our valuing of skills of others can transform how we do our work. For example, when I started doing integrated care work, some of my close family therapy colleagues remarked, "You have gone to the dark side." Essentially, that I now favor a biomedical model, apparently. You and I know the incredible work our family medicine and primary care colleagues do in caring for our populations and the whole person. I have changed my ways of teaching, thinking, interacting with patients based on what I have observed in my primary care physicians, my primary care pharmacist colleague, Dr. Sandoval, who's sitting there, my primary care mental health providers, such as people from psychology, social work, whatever it may be, right? So build curiosity and value the skills of others in a way that it transforms you. Now, both of these stories point to a fundamental truth, actually an evidence-based truth about interprofessional work, which is our doing and educating of interprofessional work should move us towards becoming an expert team than a team of experts. In other words, my slides are lagging here. A team of experts do not make an expert team. Dr. Eduardo Salas is a preeminent scholar in the area of team performance and teamwork, and he deals with some high stakes teams. He actually works with NASA, who put people in outer space, right? So pretty important work. His colleagues, Dr. Bisbee and Taylor and Dr. Salas himself wrote an article in 2021, and they outlined 8 principles of expert team performance based on decades of research in team science. I'm going to review them briefly here, give you brief descriptions. What I want you to do as I give you those is to self-assess your experiences. And Dr. Lecker, from your experience, some of these things are not going to show up in your experience with your healthcare team, right? So that's something to kind of hold true. But be honest with yourselves and put yourself in those shoes as well, right? And where are we lacking in our own work? So first, expert teams develop shared mental models. Mental models are latent understanding of the task, the environment, and how these components interact. When a team has a shared mental model, they can actually achieve implicit coordination of tasks with efficiency and clarity. Implicit means you almost don't have to gauge or ask, it kind of happens. Now, developing shared mental models requires a great deal of work. Teams can get better at this through something called team reflexivity, which is the extent to which teams overtly and explicitly reflect on their objectives and strategies and processes. With the Mayan circle of friends here, I read there that one of the things that they did is they gathered around the fire at the end of the day, and the embers kind of sealed whatever was missing or whatever was needed to be repaired, right? So shared mental models is kind of doing that repeatedly so that it becomes innate. Expert teams learn to adapt to situational demands. Now, team learning, I think Dr. Lecker talked about what does it mean to learn in a team? Very different from learning as individuals, right? It's acquiring of knowledge and skills in a team, particularly how teams of individuals collectively work together to improve and adapt. Another way to kind of really think about this is the team's ability to integrate existing knowledge in a way that it can make predictions about situations that may come up, and they can address new emerging issues on the fly. That means you're not bent out of shape when something is thrown at you. The third thing is expert teams have clear roles and responsibilities. Now, without clear roles, the teammates have no reliable way of predicting each other's actions. And it can be very confusing for who is responsible. And as we heard earlier, it can be very confusing to the patient in our case. This allows each team member to be rooted in their own expertise, not because we want them to be the expert, but more so because they can recognize that others are depending on them to deliver, right? So my expertise has to illuminate with the rest of the expertise in the team. Expert teams are motivated by a shared vision, a mutually developed vision. It serves a function of setting expectations for the team of how they perform. I really enjoyed what Dr. Aguilera and Dr. Lecker was beginning to talk about their vision for the College of Health Professions, right? And motivating team towards a shared vision is influenced by input from all to vision and is further shaped by transformational leadership. I noticed that Dean Lecker thanked everybody in the team. He didn't leave anybody out. That brings me to my next point. Expert teams have efficient and dynamic team leadership. Technical expertise is actually less important than being able to direct and coach a team to success. How many of you have seen Ted Lasso? Nobody? No Ted Lasso fans? Just one, two? Okay, we got two in the fence. Guys, you got to go check out Ted Lasso. Actually, they actually use it in corporate trainings now to talk about team dynamics. That's a whole different talk. And transformational leaders are good at getting the team to rally behind a vision for the future and manage their affect to support desired behaviors and effective performance. And evidence shows that one style of leadership is predictive of performance beyond transformational leadership, and that is servant leadership. Servant leaders are aware of others' needs, and they show concern for those needs and the well-being of their team members much before they show a commitment to organizational needs. The idea is you invest in people, things get done. When you invest in organization and you forget the people, you know, you're going to have a lot of unhappy team members. Now, expert teams are positive and psychologically safe. Expert teams have what is called a collective orientation. This results in better communication, teamwork, and satisfaction. Expert teams also tend to trust in one another's abilities to fulfill their roles. Now, psychological safety is actually one of the biggest predictors of the thriving that can happen within a team. It's the degree to which a team feels it can speak up, ask questions, offer suggestions, concerns, or ideas without the fear of ridicule, embarrassment, or any other form of retribution. Now, when that is present, facilitating team learning and performance becomes very easy. Now, when this is low, team members are less likely to admit errors, and they actually refrain from speaking up. And finally, expert teams cooperate and coordinate. Now, in teams, this expertise involves each individual member performing exceptionally, as well as the team's ability to coordinate their actions to achieve a common goal. So this is where certain tasks that can be done by multiple people, you don't necessarily need a particular degree to do it. You can streamline those tasks in a much different way. One of the things that when we were doing this integrated care work early, I remember one of the trainees would say, "Oh, that's my patient." Well, technically it's our patient, right? We care and are passionate about this patient's well-being as much as you are. But that was a rough conversation to have, So team coordination involves interactions between team members and their environment, and it's improved when the team possesses similar mental models. And finally, expert teams are resilient, meaning expert teams thrive under pressure. They are less likely to be discouraged with the prospect of failure. They somehow understand failure is data and information to act on rather than a death knell to their entire team. So the collective orientation, shared vision, shared mental model, and psychological safety all contribute to resilience. So expert teams develop shared mental models, learn and adapt to situational demands, have clear roles and responsibilities. They are motivated by a shared vision. They have effective and dynamic team leadership. They have positive and psychologically safe environments. They are cooperative, and they coordinate, and they are resilient. Now, think through your experiences or your training. What points seem really familiar? And which ones may need more work? I hope you appreciate the fact that interprofessional work requires a deep commitment at the psychological, relational, emotional, and intellectual levels. A lot of the times, our tendency is to change the process to fit our worldview and competencies and expertise and bring others into it and our comfort. I think from my reflections and listening to the literature, we should seek to be changed rather than to change. I hope these reflections are helpful in giving you frameworks to inform your journey into this work. This work is really hard. While the work is hard, the rewards are meaningful and often infused with joy. I hope you continue to plunge into the depths to make a difference to you and your community. Thank you so much for your attention and your presence this morning.
It's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker this morning, Dr. Elizabeth Chavez Palacios. She is a licensed professional counselor supervisor, a certified rehabilitation counselor, a chemical dependency counselor intern, a certified clinical military counselor, a certified clinical trauma professional in Texas. Dr. Chavez Palacios' academic career started right here at the Edinburg Legacy Institution, the University of Texas Pan American. She graduated in 2003 with a BA in psychology, 2006 with a master's degree in clinical psychology, and 2013 with a doctorate in rehabilitation counseling. She began her faculty career in the department, now the School of Rehabilitation Services and Counseling, in 2013. She is a clinical assistant professor and served as clinical coordinator for the Master of Science in Rehabilitation Counseling program. And she also served as program coordinator for the Bilingual Counseling Certificate program. In addition to her service in academia, Dr. Chavez Palacios is the executive director in her private mental health practice at New Dawn Counseling Services. She is exceptionally well qualified to present on the importance of self-care for members of the healthcare team. Please help me to welcome Dr. Elizabeth Palacios.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing this morning? All right, so I was just informed that we skipped over a little bit of a break. So I'm going to honor that time break right now, just in case y'all need to grab some more refreshments, need to use the facilities. So go ahead and take, Dr. Paz, you said about 10 minutes? 10 minutes. So we'll be back at about 9:35. Okie dokie. I think we're right at around the time to go ahead and get started. Now, in all good consciousness, I could not go without giving y'all your break, especially since I'm talking about self-care this morning. So I wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of a downtime in between. So thank you very much to Dr. Aguilera, Dr. Paz, for inviting me this morning to share a little bit with y'all about self-care. Just because I believe that, especially in the times that we're living today and the field in which we work, burnout is a real thing. And we do have to take care of ourselves in order to be able to offer the best possible services and quality care to our patients and our clients. So some of our objectives this morning, sorry, this is the professor in me. I can't just stay in one spot. So we're going to be defining stress, burnout, and compassion fatigue. We're going to recognize what a nurturing activity is versus something that depletes you. Okay, we're going to discover the importance of self-care and identify self-care options. And then we're going to bring it all together and learn how to incorporate interprofessional efforts for self-care strategies in order to help avoid burnout and compassion fatigue. So here we go. We're hitting the ground running. We're talking about a one-way road. Okay. In the field, in our discipline, within the health professions, we operate in a one-way capacity. We are offering services without really anything being reciprocated from the patient on or the client back towards us, right? We're not expecting anything in return per se. And so this idea of we're working in a one-way direction, we are offering, we're offering empathy on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, okay? And so as the clinical practitioners and health professionals, our job entails that chronic use of empathy. Now, if you are in the mental health field, social work, or what have you, then you understand that there's something called unconditional positive regard. And that is also something that we operate in on a continuous basis. And so it can get pretty draining. It's an emotional drain if we're not operating appropriately and if we are not taking care of ourselves. So we're looking at stress. This is, I can't see this. I sprained my ankle 3 weeks ago because I was dancing around with my kids. So anyhow, stress is the feeling of being overwhelmed and being unable to cope with something that's going on in your life. All right. We all undergo stress. Now, stress can be work related. It can be on a personal level. Okay. So stress refers again to that psychological perception of that strain and that pressure. Okay. We're feeling just bogged down. All right. Stressors can be any type of change or event that causes that physical, an emotional, or even a psychological strain and or pressure on us. So when we talk about stress, we understand that there's, I guess, I'm losing my word right now, a gradient, all right? Some events, some life circumstances are less stressful than others, all right? So stress can build up and it can cause then compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue then is also known as vicarious traumatization. It is the emotional residue or strain of being exposed continuously to different types of stressors. Okay. Now, compassion fatigue is going to differ from burnout, but it can happen at the same time. So we have to be careful. We have to know how to identify it within ourselves in order to avoid getting to that point where we're burning out. All right. The last two years or so of our lives have been pretty stressful, right? Okay. Not only as providers, as healers within the profession, but just on an individual or on a personal level, right? Compassion fatigue can occur due to exposure, again, from one case after another. All right, I've worked with law enforcement. Part of my background is I am a certified clinical military counselor. And so I work with law enforcement as well as the veteran population with regards to their exposure to traumatic events and just that consistent type and chronic PTSD. So compassion fatigue, again, it's an accumulation of stress and all these events that are just becoming more and more overwhelming for the individual. So then we go into burnout. All right. So according to the WHO, burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from a chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. How many of us have experienced workplace stress? All right. I'd lift my both hands and both my feet, because it happens, right? And if we aren't managing it properly, then we're just gonna burn out. Okay. Y'all have heard the saying, we're burning the candle at both ends. Okay. That's where this idea comes from. So it is characterized by these three dimensions. There's a feeling of an energy type depletion or just exhaustion. Okay. There's an increased mental distance from one's job. There's that alarm. Gotta go. Right? And we're just dragging. Where before, it was, you didn't even have to wait for the alarm. Be like, yes. My daughter, I've got a 7-year-old. She absolutely hates waking up in the morning, except today, because they were going on a field trip. Okay. So how many of us can relate? We have something exciting that's going to go on that day. Yes, I'm up. I'm ready. Other days when, again, you've been exposed to some pretty tumultuous type workplace settings. So I really want to go in, how much do I need my job, type of thing. And then we have reduced professional efficacy. How many of y'all have noticed whenever we're not at 100%, we're not giving good quality, right? Yeah. And it's tough. And it's interesting because when we're talking about, this professional efficacy, and if you know anything about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we understand that, when we're talking to our patients or to our clients, boom, we're throwing Maslow's hierarchy of needs at them. And we forget that we've got to apply it to ourselves as well. We're going to talk about it in just a bit. So here are the stages then of burnout. We've got enthusiasm. Again, we're gung-ho. We want to get to work. We're good. And then we kind of just hit this plateau. Okay. Then comes the frustration. I can't stand esperanza. Any esperanzas in here? All right, good. Sorry, Esperanza is my ex-mother-in-law, so I think that's why the name came out. And then we get to a level of apathy. You know what? I don't even care anymore. And you close up, shut down. Apathy. That's a scary place to be because we've put so much time into our profession. We've put so much effort into our profession that after, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, whatever, you're done. You're done with your profession. You don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Thankfully, I've never experienced that. But I do know folks who have. And I've known folks in the mental health field that after just a couple of years, they say, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't what I signed up for. And it's sad. It really is. So again, stress gives you a couple more definitions of what stress looks like, what it is. Are we going to be able to share this with participants? Yeah, okay. So I'll go ahead and send these out to y'all so y'all can have them. I think it's so relevant. So anyhow, again, stress affects how we feel physically, and it affects us how we feel emotionally. It affects us holistically. And here we are trying to help our clients in a holistic manner, and we're the ones struggling. All right. Compassion fatigue, then again, that's secondary traumatic response. And then that burnout. It's a prolonged response to that chronic physical and emotional stressor that results in that exhaustion. And look at that last word right there. Jen, you told me I have a laser. It don't work. My laser don't work. So ineffectiveness. Okay. How many of us want to feel effective? Like we're doing a good job. We want to feel that, right? But when we're at burnout, what am I even doing? Am I even helping? Am I even making a difference? Am I even contributing? We start questioning. So, our stress response, based on what our amygdala and our prefrontal cortex, what they do, we go into either fight, flight, or freeze mode. Okay. Fight, boom, boom, we become the aggressor. We start bad-mouthing. We start we're irate with folks, and we think that everybody's out to get us. So, whatever, y'all do it then. I'm not gonna. And we fight it, or we flight. You know what? I'm out. I can't even. And you check out. Or freeze. You get so overwhelmed that you don't even know what to do. Okay. So again, the brain is going to release that epinephrine and that cortisol, that stress hormone that affects different parts of our bodies. And it makes us unhealthy. Okay, so there's that connection there, that mind, body, and spirit connection. And so when these two, the epinephrine and your cortisol, when these two remain high for an extended period of time, it can impair your memory, and it can impact your ability to learn new information and process new information. Work-related stress indirectly affects the organization and its patients indirectly. Why? Because now I'm unable to focus on what I'm doing, kind of like what Dr. Lecker was talking about a while ago. Oh yeah, I'll take care of it. And they put it off to the side, didn't do it, forgot about it. Lower quality of interventions that are provided to the patient, to the client, right? So some of our stressors, some of, the areas where we feel the most stress, we are typically going to be stressed out by people, your spouse, your significant other, coworkers, your super, your in-laws, your parents, siblings, okay? Places, work, home, the hospital. I was telling Dr. Aguilera that my mom was hospitalized last night, and we had an issue with one of the ER nurses, and stressor, things, cell phones, devices, that cell phone. Oh my gosh. We constantly, we're looking at it. Did we get that email? Did we get that message? We got to stop. We got to put those away, put them face down. Okay. And then experiences and situations, the pandemic. Okay. Traffic. How many of y'all are like, you can drive and nothing bothers you? Yeah? Okay. All right. The absolute majority of us, or the rest of us, okay, if a squirrel passes in front of our car, we're like, move. Okay. I will honk my horn at dogs or cats or squirrels or animals that are in the way because I don't want to run them over. And they stress me out. Okay. And I'm being sick. I've had this thing on my foot now, it's 3 weeks exactly today. And it's tough. I'm a mom of 3. I've got a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I'm a single mom. I work full time. I've got my private practice. I do my house cleaning. I do, A to Z. It's me. I've not been able to really like do what needs to be done but it's like, okay, can I live with a rug that hasn't been vacuumed? All right, priorities, I guess. Okay. So anyhow, stressors, triggers, any others that you can think of? Deadlines. Deepu, deadlines. Yes. Planning a conference, Dr. Paz is like, oh my goodness. Anything else? Any others? Final exams. Yes, I'm talking to a room full of students on that side. Okay. And debt. Debt. Bills. Debt. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Finances. Definitely a stressor. All right. So again, that overlap does in fact exist. Okay. So stress, compassion, fatigue, and burnout, they all cause emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion. There's also a reduced sense of personal accomplishment and even, meaning in work. We've got the imposter syndrome. That sets in. Then we have decreased interactions with others. You know what? I can't even today. I was supposed to go out with my girlfriends. You know what? Forget it. I'm not gonna. I don't have enough in my social battery to do this. And then depersonalization. You feel like you have no control of your own thoughts and your own actions. Okay. Do any of these sound familiar to any of us in the room? Yeah. So these are some of the things that we do every day. Look at each column, see where you spend the majority of your day. That first one on nurturing, oh man, that one's so hard. It is a trick slide. It's a trick question. What? Eating healthy and regular meals. Wait, what? I had breakfast yesterday and, di que te fue bien. Like, you're good. I had breakfast, woohoo, type of thing. Right? Engaging in hobbies. If you look at my bio, I say my free time because I hardly have any, but engaging in hobbies is so important. Okay. Getting enough sleep. That's a funny one, right? I want for you to think about how many hours on average of sleep you get a day. Okay. If you're under 8, I heard like a collective, like, if you're under 8, we got to work on that. Okay. And then spending quality time with friends. All right. Versus your depleting activities, repetitive work-related tasks. When we went virtual here at UTRGV, it was so tough because I was homeschooling my kids because they were virtual also. And then I was working And I had all these other things that I had to do. So it's like, okay, when does work finish? When does it end? When does my work day end? It just kind of all like bled together. Y'all remember that when that happened? Okay. Say it again. It did. It absolutely did. Taking care of others. Okay. Which again, it's in our profession. It's part of our job description to an extent. Chronic use of empathy. That's where we're at every day. A client comes in and it's A1C, correct? Is off the charts. And when you ask them about, whether they've engaged in any exercise, if they've been, changing their diet, they tell you no. You can't slap them and say, what's wrong with you? We've got to use empathy, right? I mean, yes. Ruminating, brooding, just going over things in your head, just staying in that negative mindset, and then just a negative use of time. Okay. So all of these are depleting activities. So I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but how many of y'all find yourselves hanging out over here on the right-hand side more? Well, thank you for raising your hand, even though I said I wasn't going to ask you to, but I appreciate the honesty and the candor. There he is. There's Maslow's. Okay. So at the very bottom of that pyramid, we've got water, sleep, food, breathing, excretion, homeostasis, sex. These are your basic physiological needs. We always ask our clients, our patients, we always assess where they're at. But how are you doing with your water intake? How are you doing with your eating habits? How are you doing with your sleep? We're laughing, we're giggling because we know it's true. We put so much importance on it specific to our patients and our clients, but we forget that it also applies to us. Okay. Security, safety, body, health, family, employment, security of resources, property, morality, etc. We ask our client, do you have a good support system, your family and who can help and da-da-da. But what about us? What does our support system look like? Okay. Do you feel comfortable enough? That psychological safety. Do we feel safe enough to bring up concerns with our supervisor or with our boss, with our team, without feeling as if there's going to be some type of critique, judgment, harsh words, etc.? We get it? Yeah. So anyhow, as we go up, again, we have to understand that this is also important for us as providers. So wellness. Wellness is all-encompassing. Okay, and we're going to look at it all. Looking at wellness as being healthy in many areas of your life and or the different dimensions. This recognizes that culture and spirituality impact our perceptions and everything that we do as well. Okay, so again, we're talking more a holistic approach here. More than one dimension can be affected at the same time, and more than one dimension can affect the other dimension as well. So if we're not emotionally well, then chances are our social skills will decrease. We're not going to be able to be very focused, not really be able to learn a whole lot. Our physical issues might come up as well. So it's important that we engage in self-care activities to help maintain and promote just overall wellness. Okay. Prior to my injury, I was fairly active. I was running anywhere between 3 to 5 miles a day. But now I've been out of the off the trail for a while now. And so it does affect you. Okay. Because physically I'm not able to do it. My running time was my time to kind of decompress, let things go, just clear my mind. Okay, so you see how overall wellness is going to be affected by different aspects. So let's look at that lovely balance here. What does it mean to you? What does self-care mean to you? I believe that self-care is, in fact, obtaining or achieving some type of balance between work and personal. Okay, we all have to work. Okay. So we've got work, career, business performance, responsibility, and then on the opposite side, we have life, health, family, friends, happiness. I want to know, I think that it's the next slide. What are some of the, I'm going to go to the next slide after that one. There we go. What are some of the areas that we struggle, we feel we lack balance? I know we talked about Maslow's just a bit ago, but typically it's those three, right? Okay, so I want for you to look at this wheel here. These are the 6 areas of self-care. So physically, we want to get anywhere between 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Okay, taking a walk. If you were on campus and you walked over here, excellent. That's great. Okay. Riding a bike. Just a while ago, I saw someone on a scooter. I was like, oh, that looks like so much fun. I want to go, find one right now and put my hurt foot on it. And then yoga. How many of us do yoga? Any other type of physical exercise? Okay. Then we've got psychological self-care. Journaling. Joining some type of community, some type of support group, tracking your mood, okay, throughout the day. Just a quick check-in with yourself. Where am I right now? Decluttering. Yeah, I love decluttering. This is going to sound so weird. I love decluttering my pens. I love pens. I don't know how many else, who else has an obsession with pens? Yes, I have a complete obsession with pens. And so I love decluttering them. I'll just take a notepad and see which ones work and toss those. And it's, anyways, I'm relaxing right now just talking about it. Then we've got emotional. We've got an emotional aspect. Hey, taking deep breaths. Positive affirmations, just telling yourself, girl, you got this. Bro, go get it type of thing, right? Laughing out loud. I love to laugh. Love to laugh. If you've ever heard me laugh, you would remember my laugh. I laugh loud, and it's okay. And gratitude. Being grateful for what we have. Being grateful for our experiences. Just taking the time out during your day to be grateful for where you're at. No? Spiritual, meditation, prayer, forgiving yourself. That's a huge one. Spending time in nature. I love visiting the Brownsville campus. Love visiting the Brownsville campus because it's a gorgeous campus. Not to say this one is not, but just there's the resaca, I like walking over the little bridge and anyhow, spending time in nature, writing out your values. Okay. Then we got personal, treating yourself, I don't know, to the massage, go for it. Facial, mani-pedi. For the men, if you're not into manis and pedis and facials and massages and stuff, I don't know. Fishing, hunting, Golf. Listening to music. Now here we got to be careful with this one. Listening to music, because sometimes we're feeling kind of down and then we turn on music that's going to make us like, you know, when we use listening to music for self-care purposes, we want to do something that's going to uplift you, not something that's going to make you feel, worse. Unplug from technology. This is tough. It's a tough one. But for our own sanity, we got to do it every now and again. Okay? Setting short and long-term goals. By the end of the month, that doesn't give me very much time because that's tomorrow. So by the end of next month, I am going to do XYZ, right? Versus within the next 6 months, I want to be able to do this. Okay. And then professional, read a new book, eat lunch regularly. How many of us skip meals? Yep. Record your wins. Okay. When you get a win, make sure that you record it. And then taking breaks. So important. I have 5 minutes. Oh my, okay. Okay. Implementing these are some interprofessional efforts. So wellness checks. All right. Getting yourself within your team, just checking in on one another. Okay. Self-monitoring and pacing. Making sure that you're monitoring yourself and pacing yourself. And this will help with those regular check-ins with others and monitoring and helping pace others. Working in partnerships or in teams. Learning how to appropriately express yourself, communicate well. Brief relaxation, stress management type breaks. Okay. Taking a breather, even if it's, within the team's type setting. You know what, let's take a little bit of a breather right now, guys. And then regular peer consultation and supervision. Again, having that ability that you feel safe enough to approach your partner, one of your team members with, hey, I'm really struggling today with this, XYZ. Okay. So self-care 101, we want to oxygenate. We've got to hydrate. PMRT, progressive muscle relaxation techniques. We got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Dang it, I don't have enough time to go through any of these other than the finger holds. So bust out your hands real quick. I'm going to get back on here. All right. We're going to hold our fingers, literally. We're going to hold our thumb. Okay. We're going to take a few deep breaths. You're going to inhale through your nose, and then you're going to exhale through your mouth as if you're blowing out through a straw. When we do that, we are releasing tears, grief, and any type of emotional pain. So you can absolutely close your eyes. You do not need to. All right. So go ahead and take a few deep breaths. And exhale. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. Good. Let's go to the middle finger, just because it means, we are releasing anger and rage. Here we go. Inhale. And exhale. Good job. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. Some of us might need to do this one a few times a day. And then the next one, let's go ahead and go to your last finger, your pinky finger. So this is feeling self-doubt. All right. So here we go. Inhale. And exhale. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. It's a really quick way to just kind of keep yourself centered, focused, grounded. I'm going to be sending, I guess, Dr. Paz, I'll send her the PowerPoint so that you guys can have this information. Really, really important, really relevant. But as providers, we need to have self-awareness in order to take care of ourselves. As these healers, we need to ensure that we are well to help our clients or our patients be well. And then my last point here is we have to take care of number one. We got to watch out for number one so that we don't step in number two. All right. So important, guys. So anyhow, here is a QR code if you are interested in taking the professional quality of life measure. This is the ProQual 5.0. This will help you identify certain areas where you might need some help. Okay. I'll give you guys a minute. But that is it for me for this morning. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. And thanks for the laughs. That was great. So thank you very much.
Okay. Test. Is it working? Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Chang-Han Kim from the School of Rehabilitation Counseling and Rehabilitation Services and Counseling. And I'm an associate professor and also the program coordinators of the doctoral program in rehab counseling. Nice to see you all, and thank you very much for joining us today. And I really appreciate your times and efforts here as a member of the committee also. And also thank to the IPE committee that gives me this honors to present the progress of one of our group projects. So during these times, I like to introduce one of the project that IPE committee has been working on, and also tell you some of the progress that we have made for the last couple of months. Okay, next one. So in the first slide, I'd like to bring you to revisit the IPE definition. So interprofessional educations. Well, IPE, as you all also know, that it involves training that help healthcare profession to build knowledges, the skill to work together, and to develop the better attitude toward other health professions. So this definition has been used for a decade. And why I'm visiting this one is because to emphasize the three main areas of the IPE training from the start of IPE include the three domains: knowledge, skill, and attitude. So I hope you remember those three areas: knowledge, skill, and attitude. In my next slide, I'd like to show you the reality in terms of IPE training and evaluation of the training effect. Well, the definition says that the IPE generally designed to help clinicians and health professions to build knowledge, skills, and attitude. And however, the scholars has been studied in terms of how the evaluation has been done in the field of interprofessional education. So bottom line, going back to the first slide, we should measure something about knowledge and skills and attitude because it was the definition that we proposed to the field. And however, what we have found out in 2011, and Jelen and her colleagues conducted a study that reviews 33 IPE instruments, basically assessment instruments. And they find out 26 out of 33, it's almost 78.8%, were used in only one paper each. What does it mean? Especially in the psychological science, it means that the IPE training tools lacks the validity. There may be development papers and articles that are published, and however, the further validation has not been typically done so far. The time goes and people change, and the field is growing, and the field of different issues and different agenda. Only one papers on the tool does not mean that we are actually, the evaluation field is actually growing. They also find out that in those 33 IPE instruments, in 38 items were available. And then almost 68% of those testing items in most popularly used IPE instrument is actually designed to measure the perception to IPE. So do you think the IPE important? Yes, of course. What we can actually expect is really nothing to do with knowledge, skills, and attitude. And they also find out that 20.6% is designed to assess the learner's response to IPE training. It basically means that 20% is about the satisfaction survey. They also find out changes in behaviors and changes in knowledge is only about 1.3%. And less than 1% of the testing item is actually measuring the organizational practice. So this really indicates that there are significant discrepancies between the IPE definitions and what we are actually measuring. So the lack of validity. Validity means that we are measuring what we purport to measure. So we are offering the trainings, but we are not actually measuring the outcome of the training that we designed. And also they have found out no items that actually specifically designed to test or examine the benefit to the patients. There was a follow-up study in 2015 done by the Blue and colleagues. They also found the same thing. They insisted that there is a significant gap between IPE training and its assessment. Thus, we need a more valid IPE instrument and evaluation tool. So it seems that it's obviously true that we have to find out a better way to assess the IPE training effect. So that becomes the start of this project. So to develop the IPE assessment tool, the College of Health Profession IPE committee revisited the definition of the IPE with considerations of the unique characteristic that we have here as a minority serving institutions. So we conceptualized UTRGV, interprofessional education, in terms of 4 important domains. The first domain is about values and ethics. This means ability for us to work with individuals of other professions to maintain mutual respects and share the value. The second domain, second important domain in UTRGV IPE that we identified as a roles and responsibility. Its ability to use the knowledges of our own field and other field to provide better healthcare practice. The third important domain identified by UTRGV IPE committee is interprofessional communications. Basically, ability to communicate with people from the other healthcare field and also our patients. The fourth important domain area is teamwork, being able to work together. So based on these 4 definitions, we moved forward to develop more valid tools to evaluate future IPE training that we can offer here in the UTRGV. So let me briefly introduce the steps to develop the psychological instruments. This is step-by-step procedures. It's not what we have decided. As from the literatures, as most recommended procedures to develop psychological instruments. The first stage of the instrument development involves defining the constructs. So basically what we did in the previous slide, we defined UTRGV IPE in terms of 4 domain area. So it was the values and ethics, role and responsibility, and interprofessional communication, and teamwork. So all IP committee involved and work together to tailor the definitions. The second stage is typically takes most longest time because we have to initially devise testing items. So for the several months, we devised 273 testing items that might be relevant to those 4 domain area. To devise these testing items, for some extent, the committee developed from our end. We also revisited all the IP instrument that is available in the public domain. And then the committee evaluated each item in terms of how well the testing items reflect the definition of each domain. So any items with average rating scales based on the 4 rating scales over 2 were retained. So now we have 182 testing items was devised. In the third steps, and we also reviewed further in terms of the use of the languages. Are we using a professionally appropriate languages? Or are we using a person-centered languages? For example, instead of disabled persons, we may say people with disability. And those languages has important impacts in patient care. So this first and second and third step is what has been done for the last couple months. This slide basically shows you, just simple illustrations of how we actually rated those testing items as a group or together. So in this slide, I'm going to go over the 4th and 5th and 6th, 7th step, which will be our next agenda probably for the end until the end of this year's. First step involves a face validity testing. It means the testing item that we have developed will be reviewed and rated by the non-experts individuals. It is important for the testing items to be relevant to each of those four domains, even when it was assessed by non-experts. So based on their ratings, we can make modifications or we can make revisions for each of the testing items. The fifth step is to ensure the contents validity of the instrument that we are developing. Well, contents validity typically means that the testing items address the comprehensive aspects of the constructs. So at this point, at these stages, it is possible that we may have increased the numbers of testing items. We already have 183, but it is possible that we may have more at that point of times. But contents validity will be ensured and assessed by the expert panels by also using the rating scales that we have used in the beginning stages. Once the face validity and contents validity evaluation stages is actually done, what we are planning to do in the next step, in sixth step, is ensuring the construct validity. Construct validity really means that it's a scientific the research that require IRB approvals. So in this sense, we are going to test item total correlations because each item as a whole are supposed to be relevant to the IPE. So when we correlate the item scores to the entire total scores of instruments, they are supposed to be correlated. And we also going to use or employ the statistical method to ensure the model fit of the instrument that we have developed. In this sense, we can actually employ the exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis. And then we can also test out the construct validity via the several correlation analysis. It basically means that the new test item, new IPE instrument that we developed here at UTRGV are correlated with other popular IPE instrument developed by other institutions and or other individuals. So by doing that, we can ensure that the new UTRGV IPE address the four unique domain, and also it is correlated with other popular instruments, and we can ensure that our instrument that we develops has construct validity. So our research can be done at that point of time. And then with the completion of the first initial study, from now on, maybe in the next years, we can use this testing item, this IPE instruments to further test with other healthcare profession. So once we develop the new items, new instruments, the next step will be further validating this test instruments with a different individuals, different healthcare professions, and a different context. So where we are going with this project, so basically we want to develop methodologically and statistically sound measures that is consistent with the definition that we proposed. And we also want to develop the IPE competency instrument that comes with strong psychometric properties that can be tested and that is also replicable by other people's and other researches. We also want to develop, as a minority serving institutions, developing the culturally responsive IPE term is very important. So we also want to have our IPE is very cross-culturally very responsive. And in the long run for the futures, once we develop this first version of our IPE instruments, those can be translated into different languages and Spanish languages and even other languages. And ultimately, we want to be a leader in the field of IPE training. So our hope is that the definition that we offered in these projects help us to design future IPE training with a better focus on those 4 domain area. And also the IPE instrument that we are currently developing can help us to accurately measure the training effect. And those efforts also feed the UTRGV IP research and productivity in the long run. So the training and research can go together. And this is a brief report of the IPE development process that we have done as a team in IPE committee. And thanks for listening. And again, thanks for joining with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Han, for that update. Now it's time for our breakout sessions. If you saw on your agenda, they begin at 10:45. So we have about a little more than 10 minutes to maybe go to the bathroom, grab a drink, and then you can choose which of the presentations you want to attend. 2 of them will be here, one starts at 10:45, and then the other one right after. And then there's 2 rooms here to the right where the other 2 sessions will be held, okay? Thank you.